Hello and welcome to Pathology in Focus, a special NATA presentation on the accreditation of human pathology in Australia. My name is Andrew Griffin, Sector Manager, Legal and Clinical Services here at NATA, and I will be your host today. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So, what is Pathology in Focus? Over the next 20 minutes or so, I will be presenting a look back at what I believe is one of the most important clinical accreditation programs ever to be introduced in this country. The Joint National Association of Testing Authorities, NATA, and the Royal College of Pathologists of Australasia, the RCPA, accreditation program for pathology. We will look briefly at the history of the program, how and why it came into being, and highlight some of the milestones the program has achieved. And for the first time, we are also going to present some data on the NATA RCPA accreditation program, which will provide insights for the pathology sector, but also highlight the high bar which is pathology in Australia today. At its heart, pathology and the NATA RCPA accreditation program plays a vital role in our everyday lives. Reliable pathology results are critical to diagnosis, treatment and patient well-being. NATA, in partnership with RCPA, delivers an accreditation process that is scientifically rigorous and globally recognised to provide confidence to all Australians in the quality of their pathology results. The rigour comes from the buy-in and support from key stakeholders and the peer-to-peer nature of the NATA RCPA laboratory assessments. Direct assurance of the collective competence and technical capabilities of a laboratory is established by a team of peer assessors, which includes fellows of the RCPA, other medical specialists and medical scientists with all specific knowledge of the disciplines under assessment. International recognition of the NATA RCPA accreditation program is achieved through NATA's signatory status to the Mutual Recognition Arrangements, MRA, maintained through peer evaluation of NATA's compliance with ISO 17011 by the International Laboratory Accreditation Corporation, ILAC, and the Asia Pacific Accreditation Corporation, APAC. The NATA RCPA program accredits all pathology disciplines, which includes anatomical pathology, including tissue pathology, cytology and forensic pathology, assisted reproductive technologies, chemical pathology, genetic pathology, hematology and immunohematology, immunopathology and microbiology. The program provides assurance to consumers that they can have confidence in the results of their pathology test. The COVID pandemic has shone a very bright light on pathology, and it must be acknowledged that laboratories and the NATA RCPA accreditation program, which supports them, were not left wanting. The pathology sector's response to the pandemic has been amazing. It is understood that up to 31st July 2022, in excess of 35 million SARS-CoV-2 tests have been processed and billed to Medicare at a cost of $2.8 billion. And as more diseases and conditions emerge and re-emerge, such as monkeypox, Japanese encephalitis, diphtheria and polio, accurate, reliable, high-quality testing will continue to play a vital role in keeping Australians safe. But it wasn't always this way. 2022 marks 40 years of the NATA RCPA accreditation program. Established with RCPA in 1982, it is a milestone worth celebrating. Coincidentally, NATA is also celebrating its 75th anniversary in 2022, after being established in 1947 by the Commonwealth Government as the world's first accreditation body. So what led to the NATA RCPA program being introduced? Why was it needed, and what does it do? The program came about a result of concerns within federal government about the quality of pathology testing in Australia. To ensure standards of testing for pathology tests were being upheld and that the tests being conducted met these standards, the Australian government chose NATA and RCPA to act as its independent accreditation body. The objectives of the NATA RCPA accreditation program were to improve the standards in pathology, recognise those meeting minimum acceptable standards, encourage debate and discussion on appropriate standards, heighten awareness of the need for appropriate education and training of staff, progressively raise standards of laboratory practice and clinical consultation, and to ensure the public is better protected when a poorly performing laboratory is identified, whereby prompt action can be taken. And here are some highlights for the program since it was introduced in 1982. In 1986, the NATA RCPA accreditation program became the mandatory scheme linked to the Health Insurance Act for Medicare payments, meaning all labs wishing to claim MBS rebates had to be accredited. This decision caused a huge influx of requests to become accredited. In 1991, the National Cervical Screening Program was established by the Commonwealth Department of Health, with NATA RCPA accreditation supporting accurate and reliable testing. At a recent NATA webinar, Why Accreditation Matters, we heard from Professor Karen Canfell and Professor Marion Saville, AM, that Australia is on track to be the first country globally to eliminate cervical cancer. According to Marion Saville, Executive Director for the Australian Centre for the Prevention of Cervical Cancer, having high rates of vaccination, a leading HPV screening program, and testing by laboratories accredited to national and international standard is the reason Australia is a world leader in this area. In 2003, the ISO published ISO 15189, introducing international standards for quality and competence, particular to medical laboratories. In 2010, the TGA introduced regulatory requirements for IVDs. As the first of its kind worldwide, laboratories performing in-house testing were subject to these regulations, which for Class 1 to 3 in-house tests require notification to the TGA, and a prerequisite for notification is to be NATA RCPA accredited. The transition period for compliance with the in-house IVD framework ended on June 30th, 2017, and it should be noted that now many other economies are following the TGA's lead and introducing IVD regulations. In 2012, the NATA RCPA ISO 15189 accreditation program was included in the ILAC MRA, which provides international recognition of the pathology accreditation program. And we are excited that soon, probably later this year, a new version of ISO 15189 will be republished with a focus on risk and patient safety. In 2016, NATA accredited its first laboratory for whole genome sequencing, Geno1 in Sydney. Whole genome sequencing enables medical professionals the ability to transform the way patient care is delivered, in particular allowing them to make more accurate diagnoses and offer more personalised treatments. In 2020, Western Diagnostics Pathology in Perth was granted the first accreditation for SARS-CoV-2 testing in Australia. There are now more than 230 sites across Australia accredited for this testing, with most of these additions to scope performed at no additional charge to laboratories. And in 2021, NATA introduced a contemporary risk-based assessment model with a strong focus on governance and patient safety outcomes. We identified 4 key pillars of governance, which form part of the governance assessments. These include responsibility. Who takes responsibility for decisions within the organisation? Communication. How does communication flow through the organisation, from top to bottom, bottom to top, and even sideways? Policy development. Who is responsible for drafting, approving, and implementing policy throughout the organisation? And number 4, risk management. Who is responsible for and how risk management is managed within the organisation? The next revision of ISO 15189 and the further development of NPAC standards, both of which have a much greater emphasis on patient safety and risk rather than process and compliance, will further support this direction. and the feedback on our new approach to date has been very encouraging. NATA RCPA accreditation has helped improve standards in pathology, as demonstrated by a comparison of assessment over time, which covers thousands of assessments, and has shown a dramatic reduction in the number of follow-up assessments and suspensions or cancellations of accreditation. But that doesn't mean everyone is equal, and we still find issues with a small number of labs still identified as having poor assessment outcomes. And it should be noted that NATA can and does suspend accreditation due to poor performance. I'm now pleased to bring you the next part of the presentation as we move through the pathology in focus metrics data, and it should be noted that this data refers to calendar year 2021 information. This is the first time that NATA has provided this data publicly, and it informs as to the state of pathology in Australia today. There is a wide range of information, and hopefully some of it you might find interesting and even allow you to benchmark your data against the sector as a whole. We will focus on three key areas today: industry metrics, NATA visit metrics, and details of performances for the sector. So let's start with industry metrics. We will cover the number of labs, number of networks, category of laboratory, their ownership, and a breakdown of metro versus rural. There were 745 labs holding NATA RCPA accreditation at the end of 2021, and of these, only 27% are single-site, non-network labs. The rest, 73%, are networks as defined by MPAC as multiple site organisations having a single governance structure. This slide shows the number of labs who are assigned an MPAC category, which allows for an APL application and access to MBS billing for pathology tests. There are 87 GX labs and 39 GY labs. As you can see, the majority of labs are branch labs, 318, and the second largest being branch labs offering point of care testing, 140. There are now only 42 category S laboratories and 9 associated SB labs, and these are mainly specialised fertility labs. It should be noted that all of the category B POCT labs were previously category S and transitioned across from category S to Cat B POCT when NPAC introduced this category into the supervision requirements. There are 13 accredited labs involved in hematopoietic progenitor cell processing and storage, and 33 associated apheresis collections. And there are 51 labs who do not hold an NPAC category, and although accredited, fall outside of the MBS framework. However, these non-MBS labs may still fall under the TGA in-house IVD framework. This slide shows a different way of presenting this data with a clear indication of the prevalence of branch labs and point of care branch labs in the sector. These labs are often in rural or remote areas and provide important access to pathology. And I am certainly grateful for having had the opportunity to visit places I would probably never had if I hadn't worked for NATA. The next slide shows a simple breakdown of pathology ownership, with 59% identified as private pathology, providing mostly community-based testing, and the remaining 41% publicly owned by state and territory health departments or Commonwealth entities. The next slide shows the breakdown of laboratories by location using the modified Monash model, with 64% of labs designated as metro. It is likely that most of the 36% of rural labs will be branch laboratories. We will now show a few slides on the assessment visit data and compare this to 2021 data with the previous years. As you can see, there was a huge increase in the number of assessment activities conducted in 2021 compared to 2020. The increase in reassessments coincided with the change in the assessment model, where surveillance visits were phased out, and of course many of these assessments were performed remotely due to travel restrictions in both years. We also ceased performing online assessments in 2021. The extraordinary activity identified as follow-up COVID visit was a 12-month follow-up post-remote assessment which was required under the Commonwealth's special COVID provisions. This slide shows the amazing effort our volunteer technical assessors have put into the program. Of 829 assessors currently active in our database, 411 were engaged in some form of assessment activity in 2021. It is clear that technical assessors and the accredited labs are committed to the ongoing success of the accreditation program. NATA offers our sincerest gratitude to all those involved. Now, this set of slides will focus on assessment findings and non-conformances. This slide shows the number of non-conformances against ISO 15189 for both minor and major codings. The majority of assessment findings are centered around organisation, personnel, laboratory equipment, examination processes, and quality of results. And this slide shows non-conformances against the NPAC RMPS identified in 2021. As expected, these align with ISO 15189, and the majority of non-conformances are against the quality management system, personnel, facilities and equipment, and the analytical phase of testing. This next slide identifies the areas which attract the highest number of non-conformances and are in no particular order. Equipment must be shown to be fit for purpose, i.e. appropriately validated or verified and maintained. And closely aligned with this is the use of appropriately validated and or verified procedures. Staff must be trained and deemed competent. Labs must enrol and participate in QAP and demonstrate adequate performance, and that QAP results must be reviewed in a timely manner by relevant staff, and any implications for poor performance be considered as it pertains to patient safety. And the final area is that appropriate QC be performed, the QC performance be monitored, and poor QC performance be addressed in a timely manner. And where QC has drifted out of acceptable range, the implications on patient testing are considered. And that brings me to the end of the data we are presenting today. As I've said at the beginning, this is the first time we've been able to present such data, and we are open to feedback on the data presented and welcome suggestions for further expanding the data sets. Following on from this, the next step will be to offer you and your organisations your own assessment metrics. And that concludes today's presentation. Thanks to everyone who has joined us, and I hope you have found this presentation interesting. Should you wish to download our metrics data, please visit our website, nata.com.au, and just click on the link on the screen. And don't forget to follow NATA on socials and subscribe to our NATA newsletter. Thank you and goodbye.